Alright everyone, I want to welcome you all back to some more of the Great Ace Attorney 2. And it's now or never for us because we're now back in trial trying to, well, clear the name of this particular eccentric scientist. So it's going to be a problem because he's eccentric. So that's going to go against us every once in a while because we've seen what he's capable of doing to himself. So if anything else, guys, we're going to continue on from there and see how it goes. So with that said, I hope you all continue to enjoy watching. Let's keep it rolling. Alright guys, welcome back. Let's get started again. So one of Professor Harebrayne's tools is the murder weapon. Great. So the victim was killed before he went anywhere, and this fella's the only one who would have done it. So that's all the testimony I have to work with. I had no idea the victim had been stabbed. That changes everything. Did Van Zieks keep that to himself until now, on purpose, to gain the advantage? Oh well, I suppose all I can do is press these witnesses for as much new information as possible. The corpse that went crashing through the crystal tower had a broken neck. I made a minor miscalculation in the angle of the beam projection, that's all. That was my mistake. But the post-mortem examination revealed another injury, a fatal wound. There was a lesion in his chest where he'd clearly been stabbed by something sharp right in the heart. So the victim was killed before he went anywhere, and this fella's the only one who would have done it. Hold it! What grounds do you have for saying that? Ha! Do you really need to ask? There were only two people in that public experimentation stage in front of the whole crowd. The victim, Mr. Odie Asman, and the accused, Professor Harebrayne. And we know for certain that before the experiment, the victim was alive. That's right! I saw him with my own eyes! Furthermore, following the explosion in the kinesis, no body went anywhere near the body. Great! In other words, only someone else on stage with the victim could possibly have done it. And look at this guy. There it is. Excuse me! Professor Harebrayne, do you have some information that may be relevant here? Professor! Sorry! I was just calculating the optimum coefficient of the electrolysis to separate molecules in the human body. And the witness stand is the best place for that? It seemed as though you might have something to say about Inspector Gregson's last remark. Yes, that's right, of course. He just said that nobody else could have done it, didn't he? Yeah, that's right. Who else could have stabbed the victim, huh? I don't know. But there's no way that I could possibly have stabbed Mr. Asman, as you say. Huh? Explain, please, Professor. Of course, this cold-hearted policeman may not be aware, I suppose. But humans are warm-blooded mammals with blood running continuously through their veins. I had heard. Then surely, you see, if I plunged something the size of Andrew into the man's chest, the whole stage would have been a bloodbath. No, a blood swimming pool. But thousands of Londoners were watching me at the time. And yet, not one of them claims to have seen a swimming pool of blood. Well, no, I suppose not. You see? Not one. True, I didn't see anything like that. Well done, Professor. That was a great counter-argument. Order! Now here we go again. This guy doesn't stop. Pray forgive the discourtesy if I savor a drop from my hallowed chalice to accompany my old friend's adducing. Here's to you, Albert. Oh, you're too kind, Barrack, but I'm really not a patch on you. There we go. Wasted another one. No, you're not. No? You've neglected to mention one crucial possibility. I have? A particular situation in which a very little bleeding would result from a stab wound. Of course. Inspector, enlighten the court, please. Yes, sir. Where are they going with this? Very well, you will amend your formal testimony now, Inspector Gregson. The weapon the victim was stabbed with must have been left in his body whilst he was beamed through the air. Alright, cool. Alright. Yep. Course went crashing. I made my miscalculation. The weapon the victim was stabbed with must have been left in his body whilst he was beamed through the air. That's the case, then let's go over. The weapon was that screwdriver, right? The Andrew. Alright, let's check it out. I've seen this unusually shaped handle before. It's the same screwdriver that was lodged in the grill on the floor of the kinesis machine, which could be important information, so I should definitely make a note of it. That's a good thing then. Hold on a second. This is blood, Mr. Asmon's, no doubt. This is a problem with looking at murder weapons. Alright, so we scanned everything. I guess that means you can present it. Let's try it. Objection! You say that while the weapon remains in the body, there's very little bleeding. Is that unequivocal? Look, there was no blood in the experimentation stage, even though that's where the fellow was stabbed. The only explanation for that is if the screwdriver was still in his body, stopping any heavy bleeding. It's common medical knowledge, my learned friend, even on your side of the world. Yes, but about this screwdriver. The thing is, we actually saw it on the scene ourselves, on the experimentation stage. What? It was on the floor by the wreckage of the machine, poking through the metal grill. I went to pick it up, but the detective here stopped me. Isn't that right, Inspector Gregson? Now you come to mention it, yes. Inspector, are we to understand that you permitted the defense counsel to investigate? That you contravened the Special Dispensation for Scientific Equipment Act? No, not at all. I wouldn't do that. I just let him look, nothing more. I was very clear he wasn't to touch a thing. Yes, that's true. This screwdriver was in plain sight on the stage. But it shouldn't have been, should it? What are you getting at? If this tool had still been in the victim's body when the victim was beamed away by the machine, then it shouldn't have still been on the stage. Ah! That's right. It should have been beamed across to the Crystal Tower along with Mr. Asmon. And been found still lodged in the victim's chest. Ah! Ah! Order! Order! How do you explain this, Inspector? I don't... It looks as though everything that the victim had on his person moved with him when he was beamed. If the screwdriver was still in his chest when the instantaneous kinesis occurred, obviously that should have been beamed to the destination as well. You! This is a strange situation. Even though people are saying that this instantaneous kinesis is a scientific impossibility, that's a lot of S's by the way, guys. We're still basing arguments on the assumption that it did actually take place. Alright, time to tighten the screws here. My lord, if the prosecution is unable to explain this inconsistency in its argument, we can only conclude that the testimony given in support cannot be relied upon. Lord Van Zeeks is stumped. Do you have something to say, witness? Yes, I knew it. It bears out. The equations hold. Mr. Naruhodo, don't worry. About what? Without delving into the details, there is no inconsistency. What? Even if Andrew had been lodged into Mr. Asmon's chest, my trusty tool wouldn't have moved. Andrew remaining on the stage is consistent with my calculations. What? It would seem your illusions have been shattered. Clearly, we should hear the accuser's explanation. Or should I say, this brilliant scientist's explanation. Oh, he's brilliant now, huh? Just when I find an inconsistency in the prosecution's argument. Scientists. Very well, the defendant will testify again. Provide us with a scientific explanation as to why the inconsistency asserted by the defense fails to hold. In the name of Apollo, I will, my lord. There we go. The inconsistency explained. To be clear, I'm still at the stage of gathering data in my research. My hypothesis states that the kinesis cannot transport metal, though. Hence, the metal weapon would have stayed put. In other words, the point just raised by Mr. Naruhodo isn't an inconsistency at all. Mr. Aspen was the patron of my research. Without him, my work wouldn't have been possible. Now I have a duty to protect the incredible machine that we built together. So, the thrust of your testimony, Professor, is that based upon his hypothesis, metal objects cannot be moved by this method of instantaneous kinesis. In other words, since the screwdriver is made of metal, even if it remained lodged in the victim's chest, its subsequent discovery on the stage despite the victim being found elsewhere is not an inconsistency. And therefore, Professor Albert Harebrayne could still have been the killer. My great hypothesis holds, you see. We had to make the cage used to contain the subject from wood for that very reason. I was not addressing you, witness. Professor Harebrayne. Yes? Whose side are you on here? I don't take sides, Mr. Naruhodo. No. My only interest lies in upholding my hypothesis. I'm a scientist after all. Is he working for us or against us? It's very hard to tell. Let's see how you cross-examine this testimony, my Nipponese friend. Yes, fire away, Mr. Naruhodo. To be clear, I'm still at the stage of gathering data in my research. My hypothesis states that the kinesis cannot transport metal, though, hence the metal weapon would have stayed put. Really? Hold it! Your hypothesis states it, so this isn't proven then. No, of course not. It's merely a hypothesis, but a good one, based upon thousands of calculations. But it is widely known that metals can't be decomposed by electrolysis. Yes, of course, so I am right. My hypothesis is clearly correct. What is it about incriminating himself that makes this man so happy? It's the whole reason that the birdcage is made of wood, you see. Sorry, the birdcage? Yes, that's what I call the C. Obtuse cage in which Mr. Asman was placed for the kinesis. Ah, the jail cell in which the victim was detained. It does indeed seem to be made of timber of some sort. I'll think you not to refer to it as an instrument of incarceration, your lordship. In short, any weapon lodged in the victim when he was beamed away by instantaneous kinesis would have been left behind on the stage if it was made of metal, correct? Yes, that's it! Yes! It all fits perfectly with the mathematical model. But the ultimate conclusion, then, is that the defendant alone had the opportunity to inflict this fatal injury on the victim, is it not? Ah, indeed, sir. Someone beat me out of this nightmare. In other words, the point just raised by Mr. Naruhodo isn't an inconsistency at all. Okay, how about... Alright, let me check something. Experiment sketch. Photograph of victim. Is that all we have? Okay. Let's try this again. Mr. Asman was a picture of my research, but impossible. We have protected the machine we built together. That's the extent of the testimony then. Thank goodness for that. I don't want him doing any more damage. He's already basically proven that he could have been the culprit. but it seems as though all he really cares about is defending his hypothesis. Still, I wonder, what if his hypothesis is just fundamentally flawed? To be clear, I'm still at the stage of gathering my data and research. My hypothesis states that Kinesis cannot transport metal, though, hence the metal weapon. Okay, I think we can present this then. Objection! Professor Harebrayne, you say that according to your hypothesis, nothing made of metal can be beamed by instantaneous kinesis using the machine you made, is that right? Yes, that's right. Spot on. Exactly correct. In that case, I'd ask you to have a look at this photograph that was taken at the scene. In particular, I'd like you to pay attention to the victim's face. You can clearly see that Mr. Asman is wearing a pair of spectacles with a metal rim. What? Metal? No! Metal? No! We've already established that the proposed murder weapon, the screwdriver, was found on the stage. However, if your hypothesis correctly predicted that outcome, it should have also predicted that the metal rim spectacles would be found in the same place. Ah! My hypothesis! My hypothesis! Professor Harebrayne, this isn't easy for me to say, but your hypothesis is clearly flawed. Ah! Order! 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 Counsel, what's the implication of this? If, on the day in question, the alleged instantaneous kinesis never actually took place, then it's entirely possible that the victim was killed somewhere other than on the stage. And in that case, someone other than the defendant could have been the culprit. But my hypothesis! My hypothesis is sound! I proved it that day! The experiment was a success! The experiment was proof of all my work! If I could say something here in my capacity as a fellow of the Royal Society. Yes, juror number 4, go ahead. As a man of science, there's one thing I simply cannot abide. And that's a fraud who pretends to be a fellow man of science. What? Wait, great Scott! Are you suggesting my science is suspect? It's just been disproved, hasn't it? In front of all of us. In other words, the whole demonstration was a complete nonsense from start to finish. Believe me, my fellow jurors, when I tell you that this man is a heel, a bounder, and a fraud. I say the records of that machine should be stripped down and thoroughly examined. No, never! The machine is the essence of my entire hypothesis! It's protected by the Special Dispensation for Scientific Equipment Act. What the devil is that blasted act all about, huh? Who made up such a daft rule? I don't like the way this seems to be going. What's the best way for me to help the professor? Obviously, you gotta raise the objection. Objection! Professor Harebrayne has yet to perfect his invention. That would seem to be the case, yes? But even so, what? Going to such trouble and expense to create a fake machine to display in public. He would have absolutely no reason to do such a thing.
Objection!
He had an obvious reason to do exactly that. For the research grant money. Ah! If the government was foolish enough to have deemed the man's ridiculous notion plausible, he and his conspirators would have received a handsome sum indeed. Conspirators? What would be the value of such a grand 10 pounds? You're an order of magnitude out, madam. 500 pounds a year. You couldn't live handsome for that much years. The society's noticed an increase in bogus public demonstrations in the field of science recently, and plenty of scientists arguing with each other to get the largest slice of the funding cake. People's greed is plenty motive enough for murder, I assure you. No, I haven't deceived anyone, least of all the government. My hypothesis is sound, the science is sound. Please, you must believe me.
Objection!
No matter how unbelievable this hypothesis may seem to you, ladies and gentlemen, the fact remains that the victim was transported instantly to the Crystal Tower. Which means that the experiment was a success. Haha, Barrack! And therefore, the only person who could possibly have committed this murder is the accused. Ah, Barrack. Where's this heading? I have no idea. My lord, if I may. Yes, Lord Van Zeeks? The prosecution would like to summon new witnesses to the stand. New witnesses? What would be the nature of their involvement? They were spectators of the demonstration at the exhibition, who were occupying special seats. Eyewitnesses. Very well, the court grants the prosecution's request. I should very much like to hear from the eyewitnesses to the incident. The prosecution's stance is clear. The experiment was no pastiche. The accused killed the financier victim there on this public stage before the very eyes of spectators. Now, my learned friend. Oh, yes? It's time for you to make your own stance clear. There's clearly a flaw in the professor's hypothesis, I can definitely see that. But where does that leave me? We shall take a short recess now, during which time the prosecution will prepare its new witnesses to take the stand. As you wish, my lord. Good. In that case, court is adjourned for 20 minutes. Alright guys, I'm going to end the video here for today. Thank you all for watching. This has been pretty exciting. So if anything else, we're going to continue on in the next one.